It's time for the French newspaper review then, and Elena is with us here on set. Spain calling for help seems to be the main story of the day in the papers, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pain in Spain that's making all the headlines. SOS Spain is Liberación's headline, and they have got quite an alarming report on the inside from their correspondent in Madrid with 4 unfortunate Spanish people pulling out all of their savings out of the bank and worrying that those banks might actually collapse. And, you know, if nothing is done, that public servants in that article interviewed worrying that the government might not be able to pay their salaries. Now, of course, lots of talk in the press about, in order to stop that from happening, the Eurozone countries forming a kind of much more advanced fiscal union where they'd all agree to give up a fairly significant chunk of their sovereignty, their ability to decide their own budgets and tax rates in exchange for mutualising all of those European banking debts, what they're calling a banking union, which means that the relative economic strength of Germany and its lower interest rates would be used to prop up those Spanish banks, meaning that other weaker Eurozone states would benefit from Germany's economic strength. Now, is this actually a good idea, though? It's something that you'd expect to spark quite a lot of political opposition because it does involve governments like France giving over a fairly significant chunk of their sovereignty over their own tax rates, something that François Hollande, of course, was opposed to before the election, where he has widely promised to change that European budgetary treaty that Nicolas Sarkozy signed back in December, which creates a golden rule in the budgets that all European states would be forced to stick to. So is he going to sign up for deeper union? Isn't there more opposition to this on the left? Well, actually not really. Even Libération in their editorial say that while economic sovereignty is important, it's not as important as showing solidarity with countries like Spain and not allowing those Spanish public servants to lose their jobs, not allowing Spanish depositors to lose the money that they've got in the banks. Responsibility and solidarity are more important than France having control over its own budget, they say. Which gives us, of course, the shock news that Le Figaro has actually written an article which agrees with Libération's.
I still can't believe this.
Yes, they're also saying that what we need is deeper fiscal union, that Germany seems to be moving in that direction. Angela Merkel seems to be slowly being won around to the idea of Eurobonds. They reckon that's the way to go.
Figaro and Libération agreeing the end of the world is nigh. Widespread political consensus then, does that sum it up?
Well, not really. The former Prime Minister François Fillon has been interviewed on the front of Le Figaro today, denouncing the disastrous policies of François Hollande. Le Figaro obviously couldn't agree too far with the left today. Fillon says in that article that seeing as Hollande has been opposed from the beginning to that golden rule written into European budgets that would fix European states' debt at a particular level which they wouldn't be able to go over. If he doesn't want to stick to that obligation, Fillon says, how likely is it that his government is going to stick to even more obligations that would be necessary in order for Eurobonds to work? So he's not very enthusiastic about the Hollande government's ability to actually make this work. He is rather more enthusiastic, though, about the right's chances of winning back some political power in these legislative elections, parliamentary elections happening this Sunday in France. He reckons they could still win a majority, which would lead to a rather awkward cohabitation situation with a right-wing Prime Minister and a left-wing President. Got to say, though, the rest of the papers are a bit less optimistic about the right's chances. Lots of stories floating around about the Front National, about how well they might do, which is, of course, bad news for the mainstream right, and even in Nicolas Sarkozy's home territory of wealthy Western Paris, there's a number of right-wing candidates who are actually running against the UMP's candidates, trying to pick up those right-wing voters who are quite keen on Sarkozy's policies, but not really keen on his style. So widespread divisions on the right for this Sunday's elections. Les Echos, the business paper, is pointing out that, well, we might focus on those major political parties. Actually, there's 41 running in these parliamentary elections all up and down France, some of them very small, of course, and the smaller ones really heavily relying on the cash that can be made out of these elections. As long as they get 1% of votes in at least 50 of France's 577 constituencies, that means they get €1.60 for every person who votes for them, which if you're a party like the Front National or the Greens, who are now quite badly in debt, both of those parties, for having grossly overspent on their presidential campaigns, they need that cash.
Very briefly, Figaro, looking at French film directors shooting in New York.
Yes, if you're someone like Julie Delpy, for example, you're a French filmmaker, the absolute dream is to do well in America, to make a film in English and kind of break the American market. Unfortunately, though, Le Figaro has quite a funny story about the amount of difficulties they're finding doing that, particularly how hard it is to get visas for French performers and French workers to come and work in America to make those films. Then there's the question of the very toughly unionised American film market. People like technicians, set designers, even the drivers who drive people around on sets are very unionised in America, making it hard to pay them all.
Elena, thanks very much. That's Elena Casas with the French newspapers, here on France 24. We're going to take a break at that point. We're back with Focus in just a few seconds' time. Stay with us if you can.